Hi, my name is Vinicius and I'm a technical product manager at Microsoft in the Windows Server and Hybrid Data Center team. In this session, we are going to cover how to leverage Azure services on premises using Windows Admin Center. But before I show the product, I wanted to show some important information on why we are doing this and why this is important for you and for your environment. As an IT pro or someone working in the operations team, you are probably familiar with the issues that I'm showing here. You probably have legacy systems today working, I don't know, maybe Windows Server 2003, Windows Server 2008 R2, and actually you'll probably learn from Microsoft that we recently announced that the end of support for Windows Server 2008 and Windows Server 2008 R2 are approaching what we call as the end of support, where these systems will no longer be supported and will no longer have security updates provided to it. So with that, it's a time for you to start planning how to get off those systems, but then you have legacy applications, you have other concerns that you need to think about. You have disparate systems where you have multiple interoperability that you have to figure out. You have rigid solutions where you have a lot of complexity and a lot of costs involved in order to maintain. And all those challenges, they only add up in terms of how complex IT has become in order to maintain and operate your data center. In order to accomplish or to surpass those issues and those challenges, IT has evolved in multiple fronts, as you can see here, to help evolve the data center into something that is easier to manage, easier to operate, and has lower costs. On the hybrid front, hybrid data center is one thing that customers are adopting today in order to leverage the investments that they did over the past, but then using services that are available today in the cloud. Enhanced security in order to overcome the multiple cybersecurity attacks that we are seeing in the market and in the industries today. Developers are also adopting new technologies like containers in order to make it easier for operations to run the applications with all the requirements and running the application exactly the way they intended to when they developed the application. And hyperconverged infrastructure is another area where operations teams are investing today in order to add performance and scalability for applications and infrastructure while still reducing the costs. When we look to the latest release of Windows Server 2019, those areas are exactly the areas that Microsoft has invested in order to help you, IT pro or operations teams, in order to evolve your data center, evolve your infrastructure and your applications. Hybrid capabilities with Azure, multi-layer security, faster innovation for applications with containers, and hyper-converged infrastructure. However, in today's presentation, we are going to talk about how Windows Server and Windows Admin Center can help you with the hybrid capabilities so you can leverage services that are available today in the cloud, in your on-premises data center, leveraging the investments that you did over the years. In order to position how the hybrid data center plays in the whole Microsoft strategy, it's important to understand where Windows Server is positioned. Of course, we have Microsoft Azure as our public cloud offering with multiple services for infrastructure, operations teams, with compute, storage, networking, and many more, as well as for developers with even serverless options and PaaS services. For on-premises, customers can adopt what we call as hybrid data center or a hybrid cloud. For a hybrid cloud, we understand that customers will have in both ends of the infrastructure, the public and the private cloud, a cloud consistent model where we have developers developing applications on top of this cloud model. For Microsoft, we call this ARM, or the Azure Resource Manager. Azure Stack leverages all the Azure services and the ARM templates in order to operate the operations and the applications. So that means that for adopting Azure Stack, you are approaching the innovation from the application perspective. For hybrid data center, what we want to accomplish is we want to evolve the existing infrastructure we have into something more modern. What that means is if I have existing servers and an existing infrastructure, I can use, for example, a backup solution in the cloud, in this case Azure Backup, in order to back up the services or the servers that I have on premises, instead of building a new infrastructure of a backup server or even hiring a vendor in order to use the backup infrastructure. I can easily use the infrastructure of Azure in order to store my backups. The same goes for disaster recovery. If I have virtual machines or servers running on premises, I can easily use Azure Site Recovery in this case to replicate my servers, have a replica of those servers in Microsoft Azure. If something goes wrong with my data center, I can either spin up the virtual machine in Azure, or I can bring that virtual machine back and replicate back to my new data center, and then spin up that virtual machine again. Those are simple examples to help you understand what is the approach you're taking. Are you taking the approach of modernizing your applications? You should think about Azure Stack. Are you taking the approach of modernizing your infrastructure? You should consider hybrid data center solutions with Windows Server, the Windows Server software-defined solutions for hyper-converged infrastructure, as well as the workloads running on top of those systems. When it comes to Windows Server 2019 and our unique hybrid capabilities with Azure, it's important to notice that most of the investments that we are making are actually landing not just in the platform itself, which means Windows Server, but also on the management side with Windows Admin Center, and that's what I'm going to show in a minute. What that means is some of the capabilities that we do in the platform for hybrid capabilities are actually being ported back to Windows Server 2016. So if you have a Windows Server 2016 running in your environment, and I'm going to show you this in a minute, you can also leverage these hybrid capabilities. So what are we trying to accomplish here? Actually, there are two fronts that we are trying to accomplish. The first one is to extend your data center to the cloud. And what that means is we want to make sure that if you have a virtual network with virtual machines running on top of Microsoft Azure, the public cloud offering, and you want to connect those new servers, those new virtual machines, to the environment that you have on premises as well. So your existing environment and your existing infrastructure. We want to make it easier for you to go and connect those two environments. The other thing is, like I was saying, if you have a need for a backup, for site recovery, for disaster recovery, we want to make it easier for customers to leverage those services running on top of Azure. So with that, let's get started and let's see Windows Admin Center in action. So if you're not familiar with Windows Admin Center is the evolution of inbox tools like Server Manager, the Microsoft Management Console or MMC, and the snap-ins that you are probably familiar with from managing Windows Server over the years. Windows Admin Center is this new, modern, browser-based approach to manage your servers. So when you first download and install Windows Admin Center, this is what you see. If I click Finish, it takes me to the All Connections pane, and then what I see here is exactly the server that I'm managing right now. I can add other servers and Windows PC connections, failover cluster, and hyperconverged infrastructure clusters. We're not going to go over what is Windows Admin Center in this session. So if you're not familiar with Windows Admin Center, I highly encourage you to take a look and understand what you can do. For now, what I want to show you is how you can use this interface to actually go ahead and connect to the servers and leverage the Azure services in those existing servers that you have on premises. So I just installed this machine. I have Hyper-V running in this server, and I have one virtual machine running in here. That's what I have in this server for now. So when you open Windows Admin Center, what you want to do is you want to click the settings, and then you have the Azure extension. Here you can start registering for the Azure integration. What you need basically is an existing Azure tenant or an Azure subscription in order to get started with the process of configuring Azure integration. If I click register, it will ask me to first register this gateway as a device login with my Azure account. So I'll copy this code, I'll open the device login, I'll enter the same code, and now it will ask me for my account. I already signed in Azure with this account, as you can see here. And there you go. I have signed in with the Azure PowerShell application on this device. I can close this window, go back here. As you can see, it succeeded. So I can close this. And now I can select what is the tenant that I want to use. As you can see, I have multiple subscriptions associated with this user. The one I'll be using is this one. So I'll click register, and this will start the process of registering this gateway with the Azure Active Directory. So now all I have to do is actually go to the Azure page and finish the registration by granting permission to this application. So I'll click the link. As you can see, a new application was created for the gateway in Azure Active Directory. I can click Settings. I'll click Require the Permissions, and I'll select Grant Permissions. And there you go. Now I have my Windows Admin Center gateway properly configured to use Azure. So now let's go back and let's take a look at what we have inside Windows Admin Center when you select one of the servers. So I click Windows Admin Center. I only have one server actually, so if I click this server, it's going to connect to that server. And then I have the nice dashboard that you have in Windows Admin Center. As you can see, I have all the other solutions in here. And the ones we're looking for are actually backup. And then as a Hyper-V host, I can also see virtual machines. So for now, let's get started with backup. As you probably know, Azure provides a service called Azure Backup. The goal behind Azure Backup is to actually use all the Azure infrastructure and the Azure storage as the storage for your backups, even your servers residing on premises. So instead of having a new server and a lot of disks and tapes and all the infrastructure needed to run a backup server, what you can do is you can easily go to Windows Admin Center, target your server. As long as you have Azure already configured for the connection, you can start using Azure Backup right from your server. And then you also have all the process that you need in order to configure Azure Backup. If you're not familiar with the process, it goes pretty much like this. You open the Azure portal, you create your vault, and then by creating your vault, you have to configure your backup configuration. Then you can, after you configure the backup configuration and the settings, you have to download the agent, you go to the server, you install the agent, then you go back to the Azure portal, then you certify the server, then you go back to the server and you configure the backup, and then you can start backing up to Azure. We want to streamline that process. So let's take a look at how it works with Windows Admin Center. So if I click Setup Azure Backup, it will first ask for my credential. So I click Login. Because I'm already logged in with my account in this browser session, it already got my credential. But if I was not, then it will ask for my credential. So there you go. Now you have your Setup Azure Backup now that I'm logged in. If I expand the details here, I can select what is the subscription I want to use, and this is a subscription. I can select what is the vault, and in this case I'm going to create a new one. As you can see, this is the second one because I already created one previously. This vault runs under a resource group, and here I have the multiple resource groups that are already created, and I can select one that already exists. So I'm going to select this WAC resource group. And then the location where I want my backup to be stored. And this is probably important because of latency. Depending on where you are in the world, you want to make sure, or where your servers are actually in the world, you want to make sure that you have a low latency between the server and the location where you store the backups. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select West US 2 because this is the closest one I am. And then I can select what I want to backup. If I want to backup system state, or if I want to backup the disks as well. If I were to have multiple disks in the server, I can select the system disk or the boot disk or the OS disk, right? And then the data disks that I might have in the server. Just for the purpose of this presentation, I'm just going to select system state. It's telling me that the total backup size for this server will be 15 gigs. And then I have the show more here in order to show what is the backup schedule. Here I have the option to retain for how long I want to retain. And then I have an option to enter the encryption passphrase. This is important because when you're going to restore the information from the backup, you want to make sure that only allowed people can go and process that. Okay, so there you go. I can click apply. And this will take a few minutes, but that's pretty much it. What Windows Admin Center will do is all that process that I just explained that you have to do manually with the with the Azure Backup option, Windows Admin Center will do with this interface. So as you can see, it's a very simple task. You can select the server, say what the configuration is, and there you go. Windows Admin Center will end up doing everything for you. So we don't have to wait. I have another server already configured with Azure Backup. So if I click this server over here, and if I click Backup, there you go. In this server, you can see that I already configured Azure Backup. I am running this server for a number of days now. So as you can see, I have multiple jobs that already occurred. Some of them succeeded, some of them failed, and some of them showed some warnings. If I want to take a look at the jobs that happened, I can click Jobs and I can see everything that happened. So when I was still configuring, I found some errors, mostly because I disconnected that server from the internet. But then, once I got it running, all the jobs completed successfully. You can even see, based on the start time and the duration, how long did it take to run. Going back to overview, I can see all the configurations again. I can see what is the recovery services vault. I can see the backup policy. I can see what is the subscription that I'm targeting. And then I can see the recent jobs and if they happened or not. And I can also see how many recovery points I have. And this is important because if you want to check what date I can actually go and recover data from for this specific server, all the information is actually listed under recovery points. I can also use this interface to start a manual backup. So I can click Backup Now and I can easily start a backup for this server. Pretty cool, right? So it's an easy way for you to use Azure Backup without having all the multiple steps that you will have to take regularly using Azure Backup and just the Azure interface. Windows Admin Center provides a better way to use Azure Backup for your on-premises servers. So now let's take a look at another Azure service that we can use to our on-premises servers. The service I'm talking about in here is Azure Site Recovery. Just to finalize actually, let's take a look at the backup, and as you can see, it completed successfully. Now, if I go to virtual machines, Because this is a Hyper-V host, I will be able to see all the contextual information about Hyper-V. So in the summary, as you can see, it shows how many virtual machines I have running, the Hyper-V events, and then if I click inventory, it shows the virtual machines I have and if they are running or not. Also, Windows Admin Center is showing me that there's a better way to actually protect the virtual machines using Azure Site Recovery. I can click Setup Now, and this will open the sidebar to set up this host with Azure Site Recovery. It shows what is the account that I'm logged in, again, the subscriptions that I have, what is the resource group. In this case, I'm going to create a new resource group. Let's call this demo02 RG for resource group. Then we can use a new recovery services vault. Because I'm creating a new resource group, I'm going to create a new vault for it. Just so I can show you, if I select use existing, it is going to load what are the existing resource group I have. And then if this resource group already had an existing vault, I can select that vault. But let's create a new one. So create new one. Then I'm going to call this vault as demo02 vault. And then what is the location? And again, the same thing from backup, from Azure Backup. You want to make sure that you either have low latency or then that this is in a location that makes sense because of your business needs. So I'm going to select West US 2 and set up ASR. And of course, this is a process that will take a while to run, but as I can see, the process was started. What Windows Admin Center will do here is to actually go ahead and run all the process on the background and then pop a notification for you once it's completed. What's going to do is it's going to create, in my case, a new resource group, it's going to create a new vault, and then it will configure this server to actually go ahead and synchronize the virtual machines or to replicate the virtual machines to that specific configuration in Azure that we just walked through. Just so we don't have to wait, I have another server that I have already configured with Azure Site Recovery. So if we change the tab in here, we go back to the other server that is already configured. I click Virtual Machines. As you can see, the notification to use ASR is not showing for the server. I can click Inventory, and you can see that I have 2 virtual machines already configured in this server. One of those is already protected with Azure Site Recovery. So before we show that, let's see what it takes to actually protect a virtual machine using ASR or Azure Site Recovery using Windows Admin Center. So if I select this virtual machine, I can click More. I can click Protect Virtual Machine or Protect VM. It will show what is the subscription I'm using, the one I'm already configured with the Azure Site Recovery, because as you remember, I already configured the synchronization between the Hyper-V host and the Azure Site Recovery itself. So in this case, it's not exactly allowing me to select what is the vault that I'm going to use, because that's already synchronized between the Hyper-V server and the Azure Site Recovery service itself. What I can select is what is the storage account that I'm going to use. I can select to either create a new storage account. It will be created in exactly the same place or the same geo as the Azure Site Recovery vault, or I can use an existing one. In my case, I already have a storage account for this purpose. It's the same one that I'm already protecting, the first virtual machine. So I'll simply select the option to use existing storage account. I'm going to double check this. This is the storage account I want to use. I only have this one, and I click Protect VM. And as you can see, the process for protecting the virtual machine has already started. With that, we can select the option to click the protected here for the first virtual machine. And what will happen here is that it will open the Azure portal just so I can double check what is the protection status and all the configuration for Azure Site Recovery. And as you can see, it actually opens the Azure portal already in the context of the replicated items, showing the first virtual machine already replicated with the status showing as healthy. So that's pretty much what it takes to actually go and protect a virtual machine using Azure Site Recovery and Windows Admin Center. As you can see, compared to the process of using the regular Azure portal of configuring the vault, configuring the service, downloading the agent, going to the server, configuring the server, then going back to the portal, and all those manual process that you have to use, Windows Admin Center will actually go ahead and do all the background tasks for you. Now, let's go back to our slides. So one of the questions that comes up when we show demonstrations like this of using Windows Admin Center with Windows Server is, what happens to the regular tools like remote desktops and the inbox tools, remote server administration tools that you can install in your Windows 10 machine and then manage your servers remotely, and also Azure Security Management with Azure Monitoring, Log Analytics, and then System Center and other tools? Well, the goal here is that Windows Admin Center won't be replacing those tools. In fact, if you have a large deployment or even small deployments or cloud environments, each of those tools will have its own goal. System Center, for example, was made for managing multiple and large environments, multiple servers and large environments. Windows Admin Center only complements those services and products like System Center, for example. Because even if you have Virtual Machine Manager or Operations Manager, at the end of the day, if you have to troubleshoot a specific server, you end up remote desktoping to that server, and then you do a manual operation using the regular tools that we are familiar with. Windows Admin Center can come in at that point and then help you manage those servers in troubleshooting specific activities. Another important point about the presentation that I just showed you is that I only covered 2 services from Azure that are available today in Windows Admin Center. Azure Backup, that allows you to use the Azure storage as the location for your backups, even for your on-premises servers. And the other one was Azure Site Recovery, that allows you to replicate virtual machines from your Hyper-V hosts using Windows Admin Center. Of course, Azure Site Recovery also allows you to replicate even physical servers, VMs running on VMware environment, and even using System Center Virtual Machine Manager. Windows Admin Center allows you, for now at least, to use Hyper-V as the virtualization host to replicate your virtual machines using ASR. So I just showed you these 2 services. There are others already available with Windows Admin Center today that you can use. The first one is the Azure Network Adapter. Azure Network Adapter allows you to quickly create a VPN between your server to your virtual network in Azure. So that's a point-to-site VPN. The other one is Azure Monitoring. So if you click the Update solution in Windows Admin Center, you'll see a notification to set up Azure Monitoring for your on-premises servers using Windows Admin Center as a way to make the process easier. You also can use Azure Active Directory to set up who can actually log into Windows Admin Center to manage your servers, and even use multi-factor authentication for that matter. Now, because of the time of this session, I won't be able to cover those items, but I highly encourage you to go out and check our documentation and see how to set up those services as well. So with that, I just wanted to make sure that you guys have some important links in here. If you are interested in joining the Windows Insiders, you can even actually download not just the preview for Windows Server 2019 that at this point is already out there, but then the preview for the next versions of Windows Server after Windows Server 2019. We highly recommend that you join the Windows Insider program. You can not only download those preview builds, but also provide feedback to the engineering team so they can look at your feedback and then maybe even implement those feedbacks to the product. Download Windows Admin Center, of course, at aka.ms/Windows Admin Center. We have all the documentation on that page, so you can get started with using the tool. And also check out the WSSD program. Another important component of Windows Server 2019 and Windows Server 2016 is the hyperconverged infrastructure capabilities for your on-premises data center. And you can check out the program with validated solutions from our partners in this link over here. So with that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.